Okay, good morning. Today we are discussing income tax. This is a new subject for you all, and let's begin with the word itself, income tax. This is two words, one is income and tax. So what a tax? Income you all know. What is a tax? So this is a compulsory financial charge imposed by the government upon the people of the nation. In India, taxation system is divided into two parts, that is direct tax and indirect tax. Direct and indirect. The taxation system in India is divided into direct and indirect. This may be direct and indirect tax. So what a direct tax and what an indirect tax? Direct tax means is a type of tax where the incident and impact of taxation falls on same entity, and indirect tax means the incident and impact of the tax lies on different entities. That is different. Now two words I have been using here, one is incident and the other is impact. So impact means the initial burden of the taxation, and incident means the ultimate burden or the final burden of the taxation. In case of direct tax, one person has the impact, that is the initial burden, and the same person has the final burden of the taxation. Such tax is called direct tax. Income tax is an example for the direct tax, where if I am earning income, I am paying the tax to the government directly, where the incident and impact of the taxation falls on me or the same entity. In case of indirect tax, the incident and impact of the taxation falls on different entities. It may be shifted from one person to another. Take the case of indirect tax, say for example GST is an indirect tax, where shifting of tax burden is there. And the final burden may be falls on the ultimate consumer. Wholesaler, when purchasing from the manufacturer, wholesaler is paying tax, and then when the wholesaler sells the same to the retailer, retailer is paying tax to the wholesaler. At the time, wholesaler might have recovered or earned the tax he paid there to the manufacturer. So they are shifting the burden of tax. Ultimately, the consumer is paying the tax. So we don't know. We are not paying it directly to the government. If I am purchasing anything, my watch or my glasses, specs, anything, I am not bothered about it. So indirectly, I am paying the tax. Actually, the burden is on me. Some other persons are paying the tax also. That is indirect tax. So income tax is the one of the direct tax. Then what an income tax is? This is a direct tax which is charged on income or profit of any person. The tax which is charged on income or profit is called an income tax. Now, who has to pay the tax? Who has to pay the tax? Any person whose income for the previous year exceeds the minimum taxable limit has to pay tax to the government. So I used two words there. What is every person has to pay tax whose income exceeds minimum taxable limit for the previous year. For the previous year, two terms are there. One is person and for the previous year. We will discuss it later on. Okay, so every person has to pay the tax, that's all. Then who is imposing tax? Government is imposing tax, central government is imposing tax. You know that. How? Or through how they are imposing? They are framing acts, rules for this taxation. So tax is imposed on the basis of tax laws, income tax laws specifically speaking. So government has introduced a tax law, that is Income Tax Act 1961, and income tax rules are the 1962. Circulars from the time to time, CBDT, Central Board of Direct Tax, that is the taxation authority for income tax, they are issuing circulars. Courts are there in India. These courts are, if any problem arises, any case arises, they are giving some judgment. This is also comes as a part of the taxation rules, and some guidelines or some explanations. All these together is the tax law. So we will learn this Income Tax Act, its rules, circulars, everything while dealing with the Income Tax Act. So Income Tax Act enacted in or came into force in 1962, 1st April 1962. Income Tax Act was actually Income Tax Act 1961, which came into force in 1962. on the first day of April. And this Income Tax Act has 23 chapters and 298 sections. So all these are divided into different chapters, and in these chapters there may be sections, different lines, we can say sections are there, 298 sections are there. So let's begin with the first section of the Income Tax Act. We are beginning, so we can start from the first section. Every act, it may be, for the first section, it denotes its name. So the first section include short title, extent and commencement. So here the short title is, this act may be called Income Tax Act of India. Then extent, subsection, section 1, subsection 2, it says it extends the whole India. Now the third one says when it's commenced. Then it commenced on it came into force on 1st April 1962. It came into force in 1st April 1962. All these are an outline regarding. So we have already discussed so far what is income tax, what is income, what is tax, what is direct and indirect taxation, and what is who is imposing income and how they are imposing income and who has to pay tax, everything. Now we are getting into detail, or we are just getting into Income Tax Act. Now section 2, you all know, section 2 is all about definitions. In Companies Act, we have already know that in Companies Act that the section 2 is all about definitions. Here also many definitions are there. So we are not going by order, but whenever the circumstances arises, we may learn some of the definitions. So let's begin with some of the basic terms to understand this income tax. So first one is a person. Earlier we said that who shall pay tax? We said every person. So who a person is as per Income Tax Act? So section 2, clause 31 of the Income Tax Act defines a person. A person includes the following. 7 groups are there. An individual, an HUF, a firm, a company, an association of persons or body of individuals, an artificial juridical person, a local authority. These are the 7 persons. Individual, HUF, firm, company, AOP, association of persons or body of individuals, that is AOP, then artificial juridical person and local authority. Person you know, HUF you know, Hindu Undivided Family, then a partnership firm, a company you know, then association of person. Those persons or a group of persons who does not include, does not come as company and firm, they may be treated as association of person. Some person may arise, see we are not firms, we are not companies, we are not company. So in such person they are joined together for some purpose, they may be treated as association of persons or body of individuals. Then local authority, just like panchayats or municipalities and others. Then artificial juridical persons with some powers of court, universities, all these are artificial juridical persons. Now the second term we have to know is previous year. Previous year, we may denote that PY, previous year. In the first, earlier we have said that the person whose income for the previous year exceeds the maximum, minimum taxable limit, we said that. So a person previous year, 2 terms were there, and what that previous year? Previous year means the year in which a person earned income, that year is called previous year. The year in which a person earns income is called previous year. That's all. No confusion, nothing there. Now coming to another term, that is assessment year. We may denote AY. Assessment year. Assessment year means this is a duration of 12 months starting from 1st April of an year and ends with the 31st March of the next year. That is called assessment year. A person pays his income tax to the government in assessment year. He earns income in the previous year and remit the tax to the government in the assessment year, or he is assessed in the next year, succeeding years, that is called assessment year. So currently we are learning the taxation rules of the assessment year 2020-21, or we are learning the taxation rules of the previous year 2019-20, and when this is the previous year, assessment year will be the next succeeding year, that will be 2020-21. This will be the assessment year. So these are the terms. Now we have a person has to pay the tax, we told that, or we discussed that. Now take the case of individual. We have discussed who a person is. Now take the case of individual. When he shall pay the tax, on the basis of what he shall pay the tax? Shall every person pay the tax or every individual pay the tax? No. There we may consider his residential status. Tax is based on his residential status. Residential status. So tax is not based on citizenship. American has to pay tax in India. Any other national, a foreigner comes to India from Saudi Arabia or Brazil, Afghanistan, Chile, anywhere, any part of the world, if he comes in, he has to pay tax. So it is not based on the citizenship, but it is based on the residential status. Residential status. It is based on the residential status. In the case of individual, we can say what a residential, what are the status of residents? There are two status of residents. One is resident. We are not checking whether he is a foreigner or Indian citizen or a foreigner. No, nothing like that. But we are checking his status of residence. That's all. So the status of resident is, one is resident and the other is non-resident. 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 That's all. So there are rules for fixing who a resident, or for determining who a resident is, who a non-resident is. And a resident may be again an ordinarily resident. Ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident. Status of resident is resident and non-resident, and once a resident, he may be an ordinarily resident and not ordinarily resident. So we can check the condition, how a person may become resident and non-resident. There are some rules as per Income Tax Act. Conditions are there. The person who satisfies this condition may become residents, may become non-residents. So two types of conditions are. First condition is called basic condition, and second condition is called additional condition. On the basis of this basic condition and additional condition, we may decide whether he is a resident or a non-resident. So what a basic condition? I have already told you all these things in online classes or in Google Classroom or Meet. So let me remind you again what the basic condition is. Basic condition means a person is said to be resident in India if he stays in India for 182 days in the relevant previous year, or he stays in India for 60 days. 60 days in the relevant previous year and 365 days out of 4 years preceding the relevant previous year. Either he shall stay in India for 182 days, no problem, or he shall stay in India for 60 days and 365 days out of 4 years preceding the relevant previous year. And if any person satisfy any of these conditions, that's not necessary that he shall satisfy both conditions. If a person stays in India for 182 days, he is a resident in India. Or a person stays in India for 60 days. Then we have to check one more thing, whether he stayed in India for 365 days out of 4 years preceding this relevant previous year. Then if he is satisfied this condition, then also he is a resident. There are some person who has got some exemptions regarding this second condition. For some persons or 3 type of persons, they need to be in India for 182 days. Then only they shall be treated as residents. Who are they? They are, say for example, an Indian citizen. He is leaving India to the foreign nations, maybe for any job purpose. Job may be a business also, for employment. Then such person has to stay in India for 182 days instead of the 60 days. Clear? Or any person who is working in a crew of any ship he leaves India, such person has also stay in India for 182 days, then only he will be treated as resident. If he stays 60 days and 365 days in the preceding years, no, he shall not be treated as resident. So, one is a person who is leaving India for an employment, he shall stay in India for 182 days for deciding his residency status, and a member of crew also, and a foreign national of Indian origin. A foreign national of Indian origin, he also shall stay in India for 182 days. Then only he shall be treated as a resident. Clear? I hope you all clear with the basic condition. Nothing, he shall stay in India for at least 182 days, or he shall stay in India at least 60 days in the relevant previous year and 365 days for the preceding 4 years of the relevant previous year. Preceding 4 years, which may come earlier. If the relevant previous year is 2010, then preceding year will be 2009, 8, 7, 6, like that. That is the preceding. For previous year, he shall be in India for 365 days. This is the basic condition. If a person satisfies any of these conditions, he is a resident. That's all. Now, there are two more. When he becomes resident, there are two more conditions to fix or to decide whether he is a ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident. There is additional condition, not only basic condition but also additional conditions are there. What is additional condition? I will just say to you, that is, he shall be a resident in India for 2 years out of 10 preceding years of the previous year. He shall be a resident in India for 2 years out of the 10 years preceding the relevant previous year. That is the first additional condition. So, word is there, he shall be a resident in India for 2 years. Clear? Not he shall stay, but he shall be a resident. To check the residency, whether he is a resident or not, what we have to do? First, we have to check the first condition. That is the basic condition that we already discussed. So, he shall be a resident in India for 2 years after the 10 years preceding the relevant previous year. And the second condition is, for additional condition, that he shall stay in India for 730 days. 730 days. He shall stay in India for 730 days out of 7 years preceding the relevant previous year. 730 days out of 7 years. What was the first condition? He shall be a resident. He shall be a resident in India for 2 years out of 10 years preceding the relevant previous year. Here he shall stay in India, not resident, right? Mark the difference. 730 days out of 7 years preceding the relevant previous year. Now we are again checking, but first we have to check the basic condition, and we have to determine whether he is a resident or not. Then we have to check whether he is a ordinarily resident or not. If he satisfies both of these additional conditions, then he is called an ordinarily resident. What? An ordinarily resident. And if he satisfies none of the additional condition or anyone, no problem. If he satisfies both conditions, then he is called ordinary resident. Otherwise, he is called not ordinarily resident. Clear? So, any person who does not satisfy the basic condition is called non-resident. If he satisfies the basic condition, he is called resident. If he does not satisfy, he is called non-resident. Once the resident, we have to when a person becomes resident, we have to check whether he is a ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident by checking this additional condition. When both additional conditions are satisfied, then he is an ordinarily resident. Ordinarily resident. Otherwise, he is, if he does not satisfy, if he satisfies anyone, then also he is not ordinarily resident. Clear? In additional condition, right? In additional condition, if he satisfies any one of the additional condition, then also he is not ordinarily resident. If he satisfies both additional condition, then he is called ordinarily resident. Otherwise, he is not ordinarily resident. I hope the concept is clear. In the next session, we can do some of the numericals. Thank you.